We are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast. And with the week being over from last week, we obviously get the players of the week coming in recently. And those two players for your Eastern Conference are going to be For the Eastern Conference, it's Giannis. And for the Western Conference, it's Devin Booker. So Giannis ended the week averaging 29, 14, and 8. Some really dominant numbers. It's like LeBron numbers if they were juiced up. And Booker averaged 42 and 5 on 63% from the field. Obviously, both players were phenomenal that week and have so much talent. Devin Booker last week dropped 44 points in a loss to the Magic. And 2 days before that, he dropped 62 and also lost. And I don't understand how that happens to Devin. It's ridiculous. Like he has these great scoring games, and his team just ends up losing it in the end, and just to make his effort worth nothing. He infamously did this when he dropped 70 points in a blowout against the Boston Celtics, and that trend sort of has followed him into the finals even, where he scored 40 points twice and ended up losing in both of those games. Like you can't help but feel bad for him. And it's like those numbers, like from that he's shooting 63% from the field on 42 points is literally my career in 2K. Like those numbers shouldn't be attainable. Like I know it's for a week, but still that is insanely impressive. That it's just that was just a week. Like that is 2K. That is actually 2K virtually simulated basketball stats. That's exactly what that was. Like and you can't help but feel bad for him because he's putting up these amazing scoring games and just the team just loses. And I guess the rest of the voters felt sorry for him too because he ended up winning this award, and I don't even think he should have won it. Like he's on a scoring tear, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he was the best player of the week. I don't. I think it was Luka. Luka should have been player of the week for the Western Conference. I don't really need to elaborate more than just off of the fact that he scored 73 points in a win, but I will anyway. Like that alone, that alone should lock him in for player of the week. But Booker was going off, so like I'm not gonna sit here and say that like what Booker did wasn't impressive whatsoever. But it's just what Luka did, like, and what he did throughout the rest of the week was just as impressive, if not even more impressive. And I think the reason like why it was given to him and like why Devin Booker got that slight edge was because the Suns and the Mavs matched up in that same week, and Devin Booker ended up dropping 44 points and winning in this time. So I think that they sort of took that win they took that win with a grain of salt and sort of gave it to Booker because it's like, oh, if we give Luka player of the week, we're kind of saying it's kind of counterintuitive because Devin Booker kind of beat Luka in that week. So I think that's why they might have given him that slight edge in the voting. But the one thing that the Mavs were missing in that specific game was Kyrie. So that extra scoring option that Luka was supposed to have wasn't there, and that didn't give him any help that he needed to overcome Devin Booker's 40 points. And not to mention Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. So Luka might have ended the week with more L's than Devin Booker, but again, like he played more games, so that makes sense. I understand wins are important when determining like just how good a player is, because it's like you have to win. That's part of the sport. If you don't win the game, then it's like, what's the point? A win is a win. Like you need that. But Jesus, like Luka became the person to score the most points since 2006. The only player in NBA history to average a 50-point triple-double over the span of 2 games, and he couldn't even win this award. Like, I understand that the Devin Booker shooting was absolutely ridiculous, but averaging a 50-point triple-double is just as much of a my-career stat as Devin Booker's stat. It's literally like, it's just my career, and you're just going into a game, and you're just stat padding and trying to badge grind or stuff like that. Like, it was ridiculous how well they were scoring. Like, at that point, it's not even, like, his fault that his team loses. So, like, why punish good players from things outside of their control? It's a bit weird, in my opinion. And what makes it worse is that, like, I'm confident the win over the Mavs was, like, the difference maker in deciding, like, between who would win the award. Because both of these stats are from video games. Like both of them are unreal. But Devin Booker was the one that ended up winning the game against Luka Doncic in the end, and I feel like that sort of gave him that edge. Not fair, but again, what can you do? Maybe maybe they could do a thing where they introduce two players like of the week, and they like make it so that like they share the award. Like I remember how the NFL like they split the award, the MVP award between Peyton Manning and some running back that I do not know and I don't want to get wrong. And I know the NBA All-Star Trophy was split between players before, so why not make this Players of the Week split up too? Like if there's at least when there's like multiple players that are like you can't choose between the two, like they were that good that like it's difficult to choose between those two. I think it would bring a lot more attention to some of these players and their game. Like they play great, but when you have someone who puts up numbers like these, it's almost unfair. And it's like when you have two players that put up numbers like this, it's like I feel like that should be acknowledged, because it's almost as if I don't want to say it's almost as if you're like disrespecting Luka by not giving him that award and his accomplishments and stuff like that. Well, not really an award, but like an accolade, I guess you could say. But at the same time, like, it's just part of the game. I feel like that should just be included. Like, they should both be included because they both played well, and they both played ridiculously well. Like, it was really difficult to choose between the two. But in my personal opinion, if it was just down to one, like, I would have it down to two people, like max. But I personally think that Luka got snubbed. Maybe because of that. It was because of that 73-point game that happened towards the end of the week, and that didn't get that much recognition towards the week and, like, you know, during the week. But, like, remember, it's still the same week that Embiid scored 70 points and that was the most points by an individual at the time of the season. And now Luka topped that. Like, I feel like that would break a lot. That should have been the straw that broke the camel's back, because we already saw a 70-point game. And now Luka gave us an even better one. It's like that is absolutely insane. And we had this exact same story last year where Donovan Mitchell ended up dropping 70 points this one night, and then later after Damian Lillard does the exact same thing. And that was the first time that that's ever happened before, where two players scored 70 or more on two separate occasions. Well, no, not on two separate occasions. When two players score 70 or more on separate occasions, like when they do it respectively. Now it happens again on back-to-back seasons in the exact same week. Like, what are the chances of this sort of thing happening? And why is that? Is it the defense, or is it the talent of the offense that's just being better? And I think it might be like a mix of both. The big difficulty, like, with defense now is the rotations. Back in the 90s, they had to play man. Obviously, everyone would know that. And that meant the players were just following whatever their man was doing, trying to stay in front of him and trying to prevent him from getting a basket. Without the spacing was back then, whenever someone drove to the paint, there would be at least like 2 or 3 players around him because of how close they were to each other and how much those teams shrank the floor and how they'd eat up the shot clock. Now, since they were close, there was nothing wrong with the player going over to try and get the block, since, like, you know, they were so close in the paint, bottled up with each other, and get the block on whoever's driving, because there's not much space to really do anything where there is a need for rotations. Now, and not only that, but you also, in the 90s, you couldn't necessarily play help unless it was, like, you couldn't hedge unless it was, like, you were guaranteed, like, you're going to double team, like, without a doubt going to double team. But after a while, they got rid of those rules, and now in the league, like, they allow you to play any type of defense that you want. And this allows, like, a lot more strategies for the game, and, like, and a lot more tactics on how to win these games in the end, because it's like, what if the team breaks out into zone? What do you do? What if the team decides to press you? What do you do? And it's like, it opens up a lot more, like, possibilities that not only the defense can do, but, like, the offense has to do in order to counter that defense. So obviously right now, like, In order to deal with zone and with hedging and with a lot of players dropping and going to help, the offense has spaced the floor out completely to the point where it's either a layup or a three-pointer. Like, it's one of the two. The mid-range is abolished. Almost abolished, actually, because there's some players that really like to use it and are really effective at using it, might I add. It's more ISO heavy now, but using screens and other methods to score is obviously viable, just not as popular. It makes a lot of sense, because why wouldn't you put the ball in the hands of your best player? And a lot of people are thinking that this somewhat makes the defense easier because, back then it was you and your man. You couldn't get any type of help. And now, you can play all the types of help defense. But I don't necessarily think that's entirely true. Now with the spacing in mind, players have to think differently on the defensive end. Like, they have to use their brain differently, and they have to outthink the other player differently. Back then, they could just think like, oh, I'm going to stay right in front of my man, and he is not going anywhere. Like, just make sure that he doesn't go anywhere. But now, with the defense and the spacing, the defender has to think, do I play high on the screen? Do I play low on the screen? Do I switch on the screen, or do we stay? What happens when we do switch? Who is going to drop down from the corner to play the help? And who from the hash is going to rotate over to the corner? And who is going to be left open? Who rotates over when that first pass to the open man is made? In a P&R, when the roller drops, do I drop down to the guard, or do I drop down to guard the weak side if I'm in the corner? Or do I stay in the corner and let the guy that drops down on the P&R go up for the lob? Do I bait him and run over to the guy in the corner? Or if the guy drops from the corner, do I go over to the guy on the hash? Does the guy on the hash run over to the corner, or does he stay on the guy on the hash? There's a lot more nuances on the defense that a lot of players have to think about and have to decide on what shot the other team gets to shoot. Do I let him take the inefficient mid-range? Do I play high on the screen and let the lob pass possible? Do I double? In what situations do I double? When he walks up to half court, when he's in this corner? Like, there's so many different defensive possibilities now that you have to remember, more so than just, I got to stay in front of my man. And there's a lot more to manage on the court because it's a lot more team-oriented now because of this spacing. And because a lot of rotations happen so quickly, it's easy to for the team to not be able to keep up at all. And it's not easy to be able to put all your energy on offense while at the same time putting all your energy on defense. Especially now with the ISO heavy lineups that we run in this league. So when the player is doing everything on offense with the isolations, obviously they're going to be out of breath on the defense. Do that over and over and over and over again, combined with the walking up and down the court. That's a lot of cardio. And all that running at 100%, it's not easy on every single play. So I feel like all of that plays into the lack of defense in this league and the explosive offense that we've been seeing. It's why we see LeBron not give much effort on the defensive plays, because he saves his energy for the offensive possession. And to his credit, why wouldn't he? Because and to all the other basketball players, why wouldn't they? The talent in that league, with how it is now, it's almost stupid to not give the ball to your best player and force them into these isolation scenarios, and for them to just relax a little bit on defense, thus giving them a time to breathe. It's something that's sounds pretty obvious, but still, even with this, you can't win it all with just one player. But usually, there tends to be a lot more action. No team wants to give a player an open layup, so they'd rather the possibility of a three, since the likelihood of a player missing that is significantly higher than the likelihood of a player missing a layup, which is why there's a lot of drops. And the problem with dropping is that you leave someone wide open. And then the hash is going to have to run over to guard the guy in the corner, and then the pass is made to the guy in the hash, who's also open. The rotation has to be fluent, and it has to be in sync with your team. And if your team is not on the same page, it's very difficult to follow, and it's not easy. It's not something that's relatively easy to do. And it becomes an even bigger problem when you have to decide which of the shooters to leave open, and when you end up picking the wrong one. So you have to be aware of which shooter you are on, and you have to know which shooter is the biggest threat and in which areas he is the biggest threat. Because if you, let's say, let's go through a hype. Let's say you have PJ Tucker in the corner, right? And you are a hash player who is guarding, let me think, Trae Young out there on the perimeter. Now, Trae Young right now is not in the play. He's spacing. He's creating space for his team in a spot up scenario, and the corner has to drop because the pick and roll happened, and now the pass was made to the corner to PJ Tucker. Obviously, you're stuck in a very difficult position. Who do I leave open? Do I leave PJ Tucker, who is historically known for shooting that corner shot, and go guard him, or do I leave Trae Young, who is inefficient not really inefficient, but he takes a lot of bad shots from out there and tends to be inefficient from that range at the three-point line. So who do you leave open, and who do you fear more to hit the shot? And that's something that you have to think about in a split second, because by the time the defender drops, the pass is most likely already going to be made. Now, if you're a good defender, you could potentially jump that lane and remove that pass from ever happening in the first place. But then again, as always, that is risky because he might just make whoever's the pick and roller, whoever's the point guard in the pick and roller, might just make the play to throw it to the hash instead of hitting the corner. So that's always a risk, but then again, it's a risk that you have to make in that very instance. So it's not something that's easy to do. And I don't think that anyone on the East was snubbed for Giannis. He was clear-cut the best player in the conference. Maybe if Joel Embiid did not sit out against the Nuggets, maybe he would have won this award over him. He had a very strong week, obviously, with the opening of his 70-point game. But after him sitting out against Denver, I think that's sort of what made him lose that award, because after the talk was, oh my God, Embiid had 70-plus points, then the talk shifted to Embiid is scared, Embiid is soft, he doesn't want to play Jokic at his home court. So that definitely killed him. And scoring 70 points in the week, that was being the first week, that would wave headlines throughout if he didn't sit out against the Nuggets, in my personal opinion. So I don't think Giannis got snubbed. I don't think Joel Embiid got snubbed, and I think Giannis deserved that award clear cut. So with that, we are out of time, and that is the end of our podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching. I'm your host, Nelson, and as always, please remember to tip and donate. Follow the link that is below in the ticker. Once again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCsportsnetwork./tip. Once again, take care.